Okay, this is going to be a tutorial on how I put FOE, or fold over elastic, on a Little Comet Tales little starter cover. Also how I start and finish on just about anything. Supplies, size tag, licensee tag. When I make a cover, I like to put them like this under the FOE. That way it only looks like you have one tag, but you can always lift and see what size you're wearing. As far as the FOE, it's got a fuzzy side. It's got a grid looking side. No matter how much you stretch it, it stays the same size. A little bit different, but nobody really notices. I work on the grid side for two reasons. One is the fact that, I don't know if you can see it with this quality of video, but it makes the midpoint much easier and much more visible as you're going around, so that you can tell that you're keeping it straight on the midline instead of, winding up with your binding looking like 1/4 of an inch on top and 3/4 on the bottom. It also reduces pilling when you wash. The little fuzzies don't happen as much on the grid side. And my daughter has pretty sensitive skin, and it's never caused any issues. Okay, so when we give ourselves about 1 inch extra because we'll use that to finish off at the end. When I make a front snapping cover, I start just before the curve of the front snap, just because that way the finish is going to be here, somewhere that even on the loosest snap setting, it's not going to be visible while worn. I think that's important. You don't really want your FOE finish to be visible while the child's wearing it. Okay, so let me bring this over here. It's going to be kind of hard because I'm videoing this myself with a tripod. I guess I should be grateful for that invention. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to take the FOE, put it under, fold it over, leaving that inch. Make sure when you look at the side that you can see the center point that is lined up with, like, flush with the sewing machine. That way you're going to make sure that stays where you want it. I do 3-step zigzag. I also set my stitch length at a 2.5 and the width at a 5. When I line it up with my standard foot, I line up the edge of my foot with the outer edge of the FOE, and that winds up dropping the last stitch of the 3-step zigzag on just barely the inner edge of the FOE. Depending on your machine, it will either back stitch or lock stitch when you start. Mine lock stitches, so I just hold it down, ties a little knot. If yours back stitches, go a couple stitches back tack. Make sure it's not going to come out the first time you wash it, because, after you've dealt with FOE, the last thing you want is for it to pull back out. So start going, turn gently. A lot of times with FOE going around the curves, it's going to look like you're going to get a little crease. If you just make sure that it doesn't actually crease, most of the times it'll work itself out. Go around. If it looks like it's going to crease, just kind of pick it up. Don't turn it too much, because then you'll wind up with funky points in your zigzag. Like, it won't look even, I guess. It'll start to look kind of like vampire teeth, which you don't so much want. Unless you're going for that look, and then, heck, have at it. You go around. When I get here, I usually turn full. Once I turn full, I let it go about 2-3 revolutions. I stop with my needle down. If your machine doesn't drop the needle down automatically, make sure you stop with your needle down so you don't wind up swearing. Size tag, licensee tag, or whatever your normal tag, fold it over. Licensee tag on top, just because really, if you have to pick to look at a cute star or a letter, who doesn't want to look at a star? Tuck them, make them even with the edge of your fabric. Tuck them under the FOE, still making sure that that midpoint is along the outer edge. You don't ever want that midpoint to fall under or come too far over, or else you're going to wind up with your FOE being uneven. And then you'll just wind up angry. Press your foot again, and so once you get to your elastic marking, I pull pins out pretty early with FOE, just because you can pretty much make sure, unless you're working with more than 2 layers, but that your stuff's lined up. You can see if it's over like 1/8 of an inch, it's not really the end of the world. Pull your FOE, and I mean pull it. It's not normal elastic. Don't be scared to pull too hard. You're never going to overstretch FOE unless you have a total chunky monkey, which I have never. My daughter is a stick figure, but if you have a total chunk, measure their thighs, make accommodations after you make the first one. You can always let it go. Also remember, FOE, if you don't pre-shrink, it does shrink a little bit after you wash it. So if you haven't fully stretched it, wash and dry on hot, and odds are it'll fit pretty well. as you get up to the corner again, make sure you're keeping that sideline straight with the outer edge. You don't want that midpoint to fall under there. That was the huge, huge FOE overcome for me. As soon as I figured that out, I wound up with a lot less stuff being missed. I used to habitually miss the inner layer of fabric and think, oh yay, I succeeded, and then I'd take it out and the inner layer would be all not connected. Just kind of lay it. You go around the corner, you see it start to crease, pick up a little bit. Just remember, if your machine doesn't stop with the needle down, remember to drop your needle before you pick up your presser foot or it'll screw up your tension. Go around, go around. It's not totally the end of the world if it's not perfect. If you want perfect, you can always order something commercially made, but part of the wonderment of work-at-home stuff and stay-at-home mom stuff is, you know, it was made by your hand. Don't be scared of that. Okay, now when you get to your leg elastic point, you're going to want to stretch again. Pull. Make sure you've lined up the two edges of your fabric. Put them in there. Make sure you butt the FOE against it. It's pulled tight. I usually sew about 3 inches at a time. Pull. Stop. Oops. Refrain from bumping the camera off the table is always a good idea. Pull. Put them under there. Okay, of course it's going to be finicky while I'm trying to do this. Okay. Take out the pin. Pull. Make sure your inner is in there. That, like I said, that was my huge, huge mistake that I made about, 80 times. My daughter has many a cover that have an extra zigzag stitch on the inside. The most important part to line up on a front snapping cover is the wings. So if you notice, like, see how there's a little bit extra suede cloth poking out, it's better for the crease of this inner, see how it's making a bubble? It's better for that to be where the elastic is gathered than it is for it to be in the curve of the wing. So I kind of push it under there while I'm pulling the FOE. Yes, this is the stuff that takes time, but you will get it. Push it under there. See, so it'll make a crease, but since it's in the leg gather, it's really totally not the end of the world. Nobody will even know that's why you did it but you. And if they do, then it's only because they know the trick too. Okay, so you get to the wings. The wings are just like